Hello, Emily. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So excited to talk about this topic. So, I would love for you to explain to the listeners your handle, because I don't always like saying it's a business because it's our passion in life, isn't it? For our children and what we're doing, and we're trying to spread the word about parenting our little ones and our big ones. So, yes, could you explain to us what you love to do, what's your passion, and what it's all about?
Yes. So it's always tricky because it's hard to explain exactly what's going on because there's so much going on. But
Good.
really, it comes down to my love and my passion for conscious parenting and also
Yes.
education. So
So
those,
can you explain conscious parenting in an easy way? Because people go, oh, that's airy fairy. I'm like, no, it's not. It's really,
yeah.
really good. So could you explain in a few sentences what you mean by conscious parenting?
Yeah, and it's really a good question because I think there's many, many different interpretations of
Sure.
what conscious parenting means.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just bringing awareness back into our parenting and bringing back, I kind of coming back to our why and coming back to why am I doing that? And I think that another word that can be used for it is gentle parenting or respectful parenting. Sometimes gentle parenting can be misinterpreted as well to think you're just this permissive kind
Yeah.
of
It's not.
loving
It's
person
it's
that's
actually really not gentle on us. That's the best way. Like
yeah,
it's the hardest to be a gentle parent, conscious, connected. Like I really
yeah,
want to get across to people what we're talking about. It's bloody hard because
it's really
it's we have our triggers, don't we, and stuff like that. So that's yeah, very good.
yeah, yeah, and that's it. And I think that it's like it's for the long game is what
Yeah.
it is. It's not about fixing anything necessarily in the moment or in that short space of when our children are young, because it doesn't necessarily make it easier for us, as you said, but it's about this long game of what you are setting your children up for, like their foundations, which are the first 7 years absolutely pivotal for the rest of their life.
Yep.
But then also setting up your own relationship with them, which is going to be, forever,
Yep.
lifelong. So
Lifelong.
that's why it's so important
Hmm.
to me. And it's why I love sharing so much. I love speaking to other parents about this and getting across what it means. And I feel like it is becoming more of like a known style of parenting now. It,
Yeah.
it
A
definitely
style.
was
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, it definitely wasn't, but I think that the word is slowly getting out there, especially around emotions. Like I think
Mm.
that side of things, people are starting to realize that we can allow our children to feel their
I
feelings, and
know.
that's okay.
And I
Um,
wish I had, like, that's probably my biggest thing is, we'll get into it a bit later, but because I want to hear more of you. But the biggest word that you use there, and I didn't understand this, is we've been conditioned to fix our children. So if they're having big emotions, we should fix it.
yeah,
If I, if that word, I could have understood that when I had toddlers, it would have changed the trajectory of our teenagers' life, because they should be able to have big emotions and we should be able to figure out how we can regulate ourselves for them to go through that rather than fix it. We
yeah.
shouldn't have to fix our children.
Yeah, that's it.
You
That's
read?
exactly right. And I
Mm.
think what you said as well about our own emotions and our own regulated state. And I think that really sums up as well what conscious parenting is
Mm.
that it's less about our kids and more about us,
Yeah.
more
And
about
that's
actually
uncomfortable. Yeah.
yeah, reparenting ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
healing the stuff that, we've been passed down from one person to another in generation after generation, which
Mm-hmm.
is no one's fault a
No,
lot
it's
of the
not.
time. Like, I'm not going to
Not.
say all the time, because sometimes people do things on purpose, but, for
Yes.
most of us, it is totally, it was not done with any malice. It was done
Mm.
because it was all they knew how to do. It was just what we do.
Mm.
But now we know better, so we can do
Yeah.
better.
And it's so
Um,
overwhelming, isn't it? That's the thing, is like, let's try and simplify it. So the way that I sort of talk about it is I was unconsciously parenting, meaning I'm a good person. My husband's a good person. We live a lovely life. I was a stay-at-home mum for 10 years, but I was parenting unconsciously, meaning whatever was handed down generational, and some of it was not good, and I knew it wasn't good, but it's like I didn't know anything about this. I just was trying to fix everything. So it's like not making people feel overwhelmed with what the conversations that you and I are going to have today, but it's like really simplifying it to make it not overwhelming, you know?
Yeah, and I think a good thing to start with as well is that it's not perfect parenting at
No
all by any
way.
means. And
Any means.
you know, and I think
Life
I
is
would
not.
love to preface this with, although I love talking about this and I love sharing all of this, I don't get it right all the time. Like, and by right, I say that, you know, with inverted commas, because there is no right. And those mistakes, again, mistakes, they are sometimes some of the biggest
Absolutely.
and the most powerful things that can happen to teach your children the most incredible lessons.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, I will start this conversation by saying I yell sometimes
Oh,
still. I don't want to, but I do. I
I
yell.
know.
I say things to my kids that I absolutely wish that I didn't say.
Absolutely.
However, the biggest part of the conscious parenting side of things to me is that reflection. So coming back
Yeah.
and going, hey, this is my responsibility. Those feelings, all of that crap that just happened, that was on me. That wasn't you. So I'm going to come back and own that. And I'm going to show you that when you make a mistake, you own it. When you know, project your own feelings and emotions, you come back and you own that. You take that responsibility. And that's the biggest difference. You know, it's not
Mm,
about being this robotic, I've got it right and I'm calm all the
mm,
time. It's about coming back, owning it, taking responsibility, reflecting, and repairing the ruptures.
yeah. And you know, I think I might have said this in our messages that I was getting obsessed with talking to you about it all, because I feel like I'm like that crystal ball, that I've lived the hard experiences, and having teenagers that have really struggled with their mental health, and not everyone will go through this, so it's not a scare tactic. My husband and I are still together. I laugh about that we are, because we've had to really dig deep and learn. But what on the other side of it, and even just in the last 6 to 12 months, and we're still not getting it right, we were trying to have this picket white fence imagination of, you know, kids do well at school, well behaved is our parenting, you know. And again, I didn't think I was like that, but I did. And then even when they're little, like trying to fix everything, but it's more about having a relationship. You know, it's not that I fully love my children and fully there, but it's having a two-way relationship with your child, rather than you know, saying that must happen and you must,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. And I think that that's a huge part of it, is that yeah, of course you have boundaries and you have certain
You
things
have
where
to.
you're the parent and you make those decisions, but also there is this sense of like, you have a say too, you know, you have a say and we can problem solve and we can work together. And I value and I respect your opinions. And, you know, sometimes it's going to be a hard no from me because I am the parent, but
Yep.
also sometimes there's that give and take. And it doesn't just have to be, I know better because I'm an adult,
Well, that's
which
kind of
comes
where we
into
were.
like,
Yeah. But, you know,
yeah.
because, you know, I've lived this experience the last 3 years, and it's completely changed our lives. And I'm so proud of us as parents, and my husband particularly, because I'm the one that wants to be educated and change it. But he was brought up with an authoritarian dad with lots of culture background, and you know, he's a physio and looks all shiny and all great, but there's deep trauma, and not trauma that he had a bad childhood. We talk about small t's and big t's. Everyone has small t's. That could be that your dad said you had cellulite one day, you know, and that's a trauma. You know what I mean? Like, these are not, when we say this word trauma, but it's basically understanding that for us, isn't it? And so, like, okay, rather than having to fix it and do as I say, let's have those communications,
Yeah,
open communications.
yeah, and I think it's a really good point because a lot of us will reflect on our childhood and we'll think that it was amazing and will be, you know, I turned out good, that kind of
Yes.
thing. You know, we always hear that, well, I turned out all right. And,
All
you
the
know, I had
time.
a great childhood because, as you said, nothing huge happened, you know, like, you know, if you weren't abused or if you weren't, you know, none of these big traumas, if that didn't happen to you, you can often just be like, it was
Yeah.
fine. But as you
Yeah.
said, there's these small traumas. And when you really start reflecting on it and when you start going on this conscious parenting journey, you start to see those. And I think initially that it can be quite upsetting and quite
Really?
confronting.
It
You've
was.
got to be really gentle on
Yeah.
yourself because
Yeah.
you can be like, really see what your childhood was in a different light.
It was hard.
And then you've got to
And,
go through this forgiveness
mm,
stage of
mm,
forgiving your parents for you know, doing that, even though, as I said before,
The
wasn't
second,
their fault. They
no.
just did what they knew how, and they were
Yeah,
just doing what they could with the information that they
absolutely.
had.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be really hard. And then to work through that and to heal those things, a lot of us, for example, we have these four fundamental needs as humans. And one of these main ones is, feeling safe. Another one is feeling heard, for example. And if you, both of those, all of us will have had moments in our childhood where
Oh,
we didn't feel heard.
at
100%.
all. Mm.
Yeah, whether your mum's on the phone, because I know, like, in this generation, it wasn't texting on our mobile phones, it was being on the landline talking to
Mm.
friends. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone else remembers
Yeah.
that, but that's
I'm
what my
sure
mum
they
was doing.
would.
She was on the
Yes.
phone talking to her
Mm.
friends, trying to connect.
Yes.
And we're not heard in that issue, or they're trying to make dinner, or that, whatever it is. And
Life.
we have so many moments where we're not heard. Same with our children right now. But then it makes sense that when our children don't listen to us,
Yes.
we get this huge trigger, because we're
Wow.
like, I don't like this feeling of not being heard. And it brings up so much. And
Light
this is what
bulbs, aren't they? It's like
parents need to do.
crazy. And the thing
Yeah.
is, again, when I talk about this, I talk about it not through life, not only through life experience, but we did a lot of family counselling. So, watching everything, because we all know, I've been with my husband 25 years. So, like, the process of it's been really interesting because, particularly for men, I find is
Mm.
they don't want to admit to anything or look at it because they love their parents and they had a great childhood. But it's not about that. That's what I want to get across. You don't have to have a traumatic, awful childhood to mess up with your parenting at times. And that's probably my biggest reflection is I overcompensated. I wanted to fix. I wanted this happy family. And it actually went in reverse because you can't have perfect. You can't have good all the time. We're going to have guilt. We're going to do the wrong thing. And we need to normalize that as well,
Mm-hmm.
won't we?
Yeah. Oh, massively, massively. And I think, as you said, like, I think the aim is, like, we're trying to minimize passing on as much of our
Yes.
crap as possible onto
Yes.
our kids,
Yeah.
and breaking that cycle, and it ends with us. However, no matter how much we try, they're always gonna get something. They're always gonna have some kind of thing to heal from. But
Yep.
the great thing about having this awareness around it is that they will have the tools
Yep.
to work through it.
Communicate.
And a
Communicate.
lot of the time, because we are actually showing them how we're healing ourselves, and we're modeling that to them, we're
Modeling is huge.
modeling what
Yeah.
that looks like. And then they're going to learn that, and we're going to be able to give them those tools. So even if they do have some of our stuff,
Yeah.
they're going to have a bit of an easier time of trying to work through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when you do the counselling or the family counselling. I mean, I'm all for that, have been for a very long time. But they say something, you go, oh my gosh. And what it actually comes down to, instead of trying to fix and have these kids have the best education and go to school or whatever, if we just continue to model with love and support and boundaries and do our best on our, like, we're hardworking, we're good people, well, that's a pretty good model. Like, they're going to have the ups and downs, but the sort of end result is they've got a good family, they've got a good base and support rather than control.
Mm,
You know,
yes, massively. No,
really important.
it's a huge part of it.
Really important. So the other thing I always like to talk about is, and again, you've got some fantastic information on your Instagram, which we'll put all in. I just love what you share. And like you said, why I really reached out to you and where it just makes me like, yay, is when you're being honest, being like, a lot of people could look at your page, and this is what I find about Instagram, and I know we all know this, and go, oh, that just sounds great, looks great, amazing. But a lot of people don't put the crap in. And it was one that you just said, I just had the children were all over me and this is what happened. And I lost I was really upset, whatever you said. And I thought, that's what I love, because we need to be real about implementing this incredible stuff, but also the reality of human nature, like that's
Totally.
important. And sort of the biggest thing is stepping away from the guilt and shame, because we're going to have it. And I also, again, someone had mentioned to me about positive guilt, because when, at times you go through it, you think that was my fault. I screwed them up. I put her in time out when I shouldn't have, and she remembers that. And it's trying to just grow from it, like you said, rather than have this obsessive shame and guilt
Yeah,
to continue
that's
on.
it. And I think that if anyone is listening and they are thinking, oh God, but I did do timeouts, and I did
Yeah,
do so much yelling,
yeah,
and I have done so much shaming and rewards, or what
yeah,
punishments and rewards,
yeah.
anything like that. It's absolutely never, ever, ever too late. Like
Ever.
you could even, change a relationship with your child when they become adults,
Yeah.
just having that vulnerability to
Yeah.
come back to them and be like,
Yeah.
hey, I know so much more now, and there's so many things that I wish I didn't do. And from
Absolutely.
today, I'm going to change things. I'm going to
Yep.
change the way that I speak to you. No, I'm
Mhm.
not going to get it right all the time, but my intention is to make sure that you feel loved and heard and respected. And honestly, like even if it's past those first 7 years, which
Yeah.
are obviously the time where the wiring in the brain happens, and it's kind of what sets us up for life. The brain is incredible and it can be rewired if the
And
work goes in.
I've lived it. And so again, being I'm in the crystal ball because I'm living it, is we have a very loving, supportive family, and I would stay at home and I loved it. And so she didn't have much going on, but is these small things, right? So this is what I'm going to say to everybody listening. I remember them. I remember these things where I lost my patience, or I spent 30 minutes like putting her on the timeout, never smacking or anything, but really trying to fix the behavior and
Mm.
going through all this family counseling and, opening up and whatever. And I said to her driving home one day, in my mind, I could remember like half a dozen of times where I
Mm.
feel bad about it, And I
Yeah.
said, you're not going to get in trouble, or you're not going to upset me. I said, but, and this is like, I really wanted to know. I said, is there any time that you felt mum was, and this is 15, like 14, 15, so open conversations. I said, is there any time that you remember or a feeling that I made you feel that's not a positive thing or that was upsetting? And I'm not kidding, because she's very open with her words to me. She's like, no, why? Oh gosh, she can't remember any of that. And then she remembered this one thing that she did. And that's what I want to say to everybody is they're not going to remember all of these things that we consume ourselves with guilt and shame when we're trying to do the best version of ourselves as mums. If we're trying to work and learn every day, they're not going to remember all of those small things where you feel so much guilt about it.
Yeah, and I love that you had that conversation with her, and you made her feel safe enough to be
Yeah.
able to, talk about that, just even starting it off with, this is, you're not going to get in trouble by this, and,
Mhm.
just say whatever, and giving her that space to be able to share, I think is it's
Mm.
so important. And I love doing that with my kids as well now.
So good.
What did you enjoy about today, and what didn't
Yeah.
you enjoy, and what have and it's so interesting sometimes the things that they say as well. And you're like, okay, all right, that's a
Yeah.
great place for me then to start tomorrow and reflect
Mhm.
on that.
Reflection and learning. And again, the relationship I've had with my parents and my father was always the most challenging one. But now being much older and all the work we've done, you look at it so differently, and he did his best. He
Yes.
came from trauma, like I said, and it's like, yeah, it's deep, but it doesn't need to be. Just every day is a new day, and we try and do the best we can. So the other thing that I always want to talk about too, when we're talking about this sort of conscious, connected parenting, is discipline. Because people go, you can't can't you discipline? Are you not disciplining? It's not about that. There needs to
Yeah.
be a no when needs to be a no, and there needs to be sort of positive discipline. So it's not punishment.
Yes.
The big
Yes.
difference, because when people start talking, they're like, oh, what does that mean? And airy fairy, like I keep saying. I'm like, no, 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 no. There are boundaries. There is discipline, but not punishment. So can you sort of explain a little bit about this positive discipline when you're in these situations that might be a bit challenging?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that probably the best place to start is, yeah, with those boundaries, as you said. Like, boundaries are a huge part of respectful parenting.
Yeah.
It's really important, and the best way to kind of describe this is, imagine if you were walking on a bridge,
Mhm.
and you're walking on this bridge, but it doesn't have any barriers, anything on the
Gives me
side.
anxiety right
It
there.
feels really unsafe,
It
right?
does.
Like there's you feel like, oh gosh, what if I fall off? But as soon as those kind of barriers, or there's something along the edge there,
Good.
you feel contained and you feel safe. And that's
Like,
why boundaries are so
that's
important for our
awesome.
children,
Yeah, that's a
because if
really
they
great
don't have
analogy.
them,
Yeah.
yeah. And if they don't have them, that's when they start feeling unsafe. And when you feel unsafe, which, as I was talking before, is one of our core needs, that's when children misbehave because their
Mm.
needs are not met. So, this is the first thing. It's really important. So, the way that I then work with that is by trying to put boundaries in without shame. So, a lot of the time, that is acknowledging the feeling. So, before you were talking about, the feelings, and all of our feelings are valid. every single thing that we feel, whether
Absolutely.
it's sadness, anger, jealous, disappointed, whatever it may
Human.
be. And our children's feelings are also completely
Mhm.
valid. So
Mhm.
let's have an example of, a child who has just hit their sibling. Let's just say something like that. They've hit their
Yeah.
sibling. Immediately, I feel like most people would want to
Tell
jump
them
on
off.
that and,
Yeah.
yeah, time out, they're in trouble or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. The one who's done the hitting is immediately labeled as, like a villain, and the
Mhm.
person who has been hit is the victim. And we start giving these we give this to our children, like we give them these labels initially. So what I would be doing in a situation like this is, first of all, going to the child who's hurt, because I want to model that I actually value helping people,
Mhm.
and giving them empathy. So I'll check that they're okay. Then once they're okay and we know that everything's going to be fine, I will be looking at the child who's done, the hitting, and I would say something like, "Oh gosh, it looked like you were really angry right then." Maybe you'd say something like that. However, I want to just preface this by saying not all children like
I
to
was
be
gonna say,
told that they're feeling angry. So
yeah.
this is about observing your children and what
Mhm.
works for them. I've got one who's totally cool with that. It kind of
Yep.
helps them. I've got
Yep.
one who, if I say, "You look
Oh,
angry," he
um,
would absolutely lose the plot and say,
yep.
"I am not angry." And I think as well, just think about yourself and what you like. When you're feeling angry, do you like someone to come up to you and say, "Oh gosh, you look really
I know.
angry"?
No, we
You know,
don't.
but it can be helpful sometimes. So, or you can be like, "Oh wow, it's totally okay to be angry." So it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
However, it's not okay to do that. I
Mm.
can't allow you to do that. So
Yeah.
this is the kind of boundary, this is the kind of language that we use that's without shame.
Sure.
So, I can't let you, I have to stop you from doing that. It's not okay to do that.
Yeah.
These are the kind of ways we speak to people. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, but my battery is going to die. Can I get the
Oh,
charger?"
that's so funny. No worries. Just go, go,
Sorry,
run, run.
let me
I'll
run.
talk about something. This is normal life. This is crazy. What I'm gonna, if you can hear me before you, can you not go dead on your batteries? Is probably talking about the most challenging ones, because I've got the three girls with all the different personalities, and I find that the ones that need the love and kindness the most, are you there? You're probably going to hear me. Anyway, I'm going to talk about this on the podcast.
I'm here.
You're back, right. So what I was just saying is what I'd love to dig a little deeper with that is having the three girls, same thing, different personalities. One, you can just say, please, have that conversation. Okay, I'm sorry. One, you cannot, right? So they're the ones I think I want to ask you more about. So for example, for my parenting, the ones that are the most challenging are sometimes the hardest, and this is going to sound really probably not very nice, but if you've had a very stressful time and you've got the one that is the hitter and the one that's a screamer and the one that does it all the time, this is just not like a one-off. It's very hard to like your child, like love them. We're going to love them to the last breath on earth. But I want to be really raw and honest, because we're all living this. It's very hard to like the one that's doing the hitting all the time and stay calm. And for example, like you said, if you said to that child, I know you're angry, understand, and he just goes, "Oh," what do you do? What? So if you've got a child who's more fiery like that, there's nothing wrong with that. But as a parent, where you've got three kids, me,
Yeah.
not being able to regulate my emotions, just being whacked in the head by that child for the third time in that day, just saying, how would you deal with that sort of child that has that sort of bit more of a temperament, that's a bit doesn't want to be told what to do? How would you
Yeah.
that if that happened? How would you word that for the child that doesn't like being told? How would you word it?
Yeah, for sure. So those who don't really enjoy kind of being told something like that,
Yep.
it's more about that presence and that
Okay.
holding that space for them. So holding them through that feeling. And sometimes the word holding space can seem a little bit airy fairy as well. So I don't know if I need to kind of explain that
Please
much.
do, because I know what you're talking about. Because you don't have to. Again, let's go back to, we're not fixing it.
Yeah.
We're holding space. And
And that's exactly it.
I didn't know about this. So I tried to fix her when she was in one of those rages. Poor
Yeah.
thing. But I
Yeah.
did not understand about holding space. So please explain what holding space
Okay.
means
Well, I'll
for a
give
child
you
that's having upset.
the kind of example that I give to people is I try and show what it would look like for you as an adult. So
Yeah.
an example, you have come home from work, you've had a really rubbish day, you've just been really stressed trying to get X, Y, and Z done. Your boss has been coming down on you, whatever it might be. You just had a
you're in a
really
bad
awful
mood.
time. You come home and you say to your partner, to your husband, whoever it might be, oh my gosh, I've just had the worst day ever. This happened, that happened. It was so upsetting for me. And then I feel really angry at this person, rah, 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 rah. And they turn around and say to you, oh, don't be ridiculous, or that's not even bad. Stop complaining. Here, have a glass of wine, or just
Yes.
have some chocolate and get over it, or,
Yeah.
you'll be fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
Or let's flip it around. The exact same thing happens. You come home, you say those things, and your partner says to you, oh, gosh, babe, that sounds like a really hard day. I'm
So
so
simple.
sorry that happened to you. Let me sit with you here and
Yeah.
tell me more about it.
Yeah.
And can you feel that difference, right? Like
Yes.
that feeling heard and validated
That's
through
crazy.
your experience. It's like
Mm.
a big breath,
Fun.
like a big
Big.
sigh of relief.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
perfect explanation again, getting back to a child who can't regulate their emotions and has not got an adult brain and is losing the plot.
Yeah.
And just hit a child. So whatever. Tell me what you would do in that
Yeah.
situation.
So I'd first of all make sure everybody's going to be safe. If
Yep.
everybody's safe where you are right now, totally fine to stay there.
Yep.
If not, you might want to move into another room with this
Okay.
child,
Yep.
or you might want to move your other kids out of
I
the
was going to
way.
say that,
It's
or move
just
the
going to
other
be
ones.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be easier to move the others if the
No.
one that's
Yes.
going wild doesn't want to move anywhere, and you don't want to have to be wrestling them
That's right.
around. So
Yeah.
you might just say, hey guys, do you want to just pop through there and just play with the Lego or whatever it might be? I'll just be 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's for those who don't want to hear as many words, and to be honest, you don't even need many words for a lot of the kids. It really is about your loving presence being around
Yeah.
them so they know you're there and holding them through whatever big explosion they're going through. And what can be really great about not using so many words is that you can actually concentrate on your own
Yeah.
emotions that are
Good
happening
idea.
instead. So tuning
Mm.
into those and like, okay, you're feeling really angry about this situation as well because you just couldn't be bothered to deal with this crap right now. You got to make dinner and you wanted to go and do a load of washing and you also wanted to read your book or whatever it might want to be. You don't
What?
have time for, dealing with your emotions right now.
Mhm.
So this can be a little moment to just be like, okay, check in. Why am I feeling so angry about this? Is it because I wanted to get those other stuff done? Is it because I feel unheard? Is it because I feel unloved? Is it because of, stuff that happened in your own childhood? You don't have to get that deep. You
No, I
don't
was
have
going to say
to.
you don't have to. Yeah. Yeah.
The further you get into this kind of journey, you tend to just it comes up for you anyway, but you don't have to start there. It can be very surface level of I just didn't have time for this crap right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then just sitting with that yourself. And then I honestly, a lot of the time, I'll just be like, yeah. And that's all I need to say. One thing I love to say is fair enough.
Yeah. It's
Fair
a good one.
enough. I'm
It's a good
right
one.
here. Even if they don't want you to say that, just kind of being there. Some kids want to be touched, some don't. You've got to
Mine
observe
did
your
not.
child. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as you're talking, and I'm again being really real, I had this yesterday with, she's 15 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to do all this stuff, and I understand. And then it got all of these things happened, and she would say, "Shut up!" Like, because I was trying to help her, I felt bad for her, and then so I'm like, okay. And then I went to touch her. I'm like, okay, right.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh well, I'll leave the room because again, I'm learning, right? I'm learning. She goes, "Don't go." I've gone, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit
Yeah.
there, but because
right.
she's older and it's verbalized. Why I want to keep saying it is what I'm going through now would be very similar as when she was a toddler, and so you just sort of take 10 years off. It's the same sort of
Really,
brain.
the toddler and the teenage
Yeah,
brain, the stuff that's happening,
yeah,
it's very, very similar.
very
So it is,
similar.
and it's good that she can verbalize that. And I was actually going to say, it's actually okay if you do need to leave. If your child wants you to go,
Yeah,
I've got one
yeah,
who's very happy to be in his room having that. And I
yeah.
can kind of feel when, you can feel this energy of like, all right, it's time for me to just pop my head in. And I might just pop my head in and say, how you going? And sometimes it'll be, and I'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit more space and I'll close the
Same.
door. I'm here for you when you're ready.
Yeah,
And then
so
I'll
good.
feel into it. Okay, is he ready now? And this might be 10
So
minutes later
good.
and I'll pop
So
in.
good. Yeah.
How are you feeling right now? And he's like, oh, I'm just so, and then he's ready to talk about it. He's ready to,
Right.
and I'm like, that's when I can then start speaking, and in the things that I would have maybe said to the other child in the moment, I
Yeah.
can do it to him then, because he's a little bit more regulated and he's more receptive to
Yeah.
hearing it. And this is why it's just so good to begin to know your children. And that's where this observation and this witnessing and of them comes in. And the more you get to know them, the easier this becomes. And I think when you have multiple children, this is where it gets hard, because you're not doing the same for every single one. You've got your own little tactics for each.
And look, again, on reflection. So we've got the eldest who, like I said, wasn't anything to do with our parenting. Let me tell you, she's just a kid that's like, yeah, right. So then why wouldn't we parent the same? And then my poor middle, gosh, that's why I feel so bad about it. It's why I know we can't change anything, but if I did that with her when she was a toddler, we wouldn't have had the arguments and the problems now, which are getting fixed because I'm doing what you're saying and it works. And for that to happen last night, that wasn't happening before. Like, this is a whole year of a lot of family stuff to understand what you're talking about, but it works. And every child is so different. So you can parent a little bit different to understand their personality.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
right.
it? Yeah. Amazing. And that's so great. And again, it's like holding space for those big emotions, isn't it? Rather than trying to fix it. Like, I know I keep repeating myself, but
Yeah, that's it. It's the not fixing, and the holding space is basically just being there without judgment, listening, hearing, accepting that it is what it is. And one of the other educators that I work with, she has this great analogy, and she always talks about, it's like the weather. The weather is, it can be this and that, and the world needs to have storms, like the ecosystem, it needs to have a storm in order for things to kind of shift and change and then settle down. So having those moments, it's kind of good for us. It's good for us to have those big kind of outbursts and things. It kind of helps us rebalance and recalibrate ourselves. It's then just hard for us when our children are doing it, when we don't feel like we have the energy. When we are totally regulated ourselves, when we feel like our cup is completely filled up and our kids have these big emotions, it's so easy. It feels so easy, right, to be there for them because we're feeling good. But as soon as we're not regulated, and as soon as, and being dysregulated, I don't actually think it's a bad thing. There's a lot of buzzwords around that at the moment. We've got to be regulated, we've got to be regulated. It's not a bad thing. Like, we're all going to feel that. And again, it's just a short phase, in a snippet of time. But yeah, once we're feeling like that, it's so much harder for us to then hold that space for our children, and then giving ourselves the grace in that, and just being able to be like, okay, I'm gonna be really struggling to deal with this right now. And even saying that to your kids, sometimes I'll say that to them. I'll be like, gosh, mummy's just really not feeling too good either now, so I'm probably not going to be able to help you out the best that I can, but I'm going to really try, but it might not go well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this type of parenting, so when we're trying to do this, it is hard. It's not easy, and it's not gentle on us. It's not. And there's all these jokes on Instagram, but it's just really having these amazing conversations that it's not airy fairy, like I keep saying, or that, when we say gentle, I suppose it sounds, like there's no conflict and stuff, but that's not humans. Like, we have to have all of those emotions and not label things bad. That was been the other thing too, label things bad or good, or, it's confusing. But really, when, children aren't born, with being bad or naughty, or, like, it's us trying to, try to regulate the situation, but we can't always.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a really good point, is that when children do behave this way, it's not misbehavior, it's not naughty, it's not manipulative, it's not attention seeking. It's a child doing the best that they can in that moment. Like, they're literally doing all they can, because when children are that, younger children, they have zero, like little to no impulse control. So what they're doing is they're just doing, they're just being, they're just acting, and they're just responding. They can't even stop themselves a lot of the time. This develops kind of later on, like, 6 onwards, you'll start to notice this a little bit more. Even then, not as much. Also, our brains are not fully developed until we are in our mid 20s, like 27.
Absolutely.
When we're around about 6, it's I think it's around about 95% at age 6.
Yeah.
So we can't expect our children to be doing the
Adult stuff.
same things that exactly, and things that we can't even do. We
Oh,
can't even regulate our own emotions well because we weren't modeled that. It wasn't modeled to us in our childhood. So we're learning at the same time as they're learning, and we're going to make these mistakes.
mm,
And I think that that's the important part is that saying, and I say this to my kids so many times, like, and one great time to talk to your kids is
mm,
when you're driving in the car because
mm,
there's no direct eye contact.
mhm.
So it feels less confronting for them.
Sure.
So nobody's looking at one another. So that, and also bedtime when you're laying next to each other
Yep.
and the lights are out before you go to bed, another great time. It's less confronting. So if
Mhm.
you want to have one of these big conversations, good time.
Yeah.
So I will, sometimes be in the car driving and I'll be like, hey, did you know that mummy never learned how to regulate her emotions when I was little? Nobody ever taught me. I didn't learn how to do this. I didn't know. But I'm learning now at the same time as you. And
No.
isn't that so crazy that we're both learning together? So I'm not going to always get it right. And sometimes you'll probably get it better than I do. And
Yeah.
you can tell me. And they
Yep.
do. They'll
Good.
pull me up on it now. They'll be like, Mom, I don't think that you should have spoken to me in that way. And that softens me. And I'm
So
like,
good.
yeah, you're right.
So
You're right. Like I
true.
shouldn't. Um,
Yeah.
and because I apologize so much to them from
Mm.
the times when I do mess up,
Yep.
like especially my 6-year-old now, he is incredible. This morning, for example, he spoke to me in a really funny way, like really off. He kind of like shouted at me about something, and I was like, "Oh, it's not okay for you to speak to me like that, buddy." And he walked off. And 2 minutes later, he came back, gave me a cuddle, and he went, "I'm sorry I spoke to you like that, mummy." And I'm like, "Yeah, no worries at all." And he only does that because I've done it to him.
Yes. And so where I'm at with this is we did that for a very long time. So it's going to take, so again with the teenagers is like, if we've spoken like that or not allowed them to have a voice for so long, we've got to really take that on board and not say, that's the whole thing, is the wording is not trying to fix it, but just say what we're saying now when it's disrespectful or rude or whatever. I'm saying, I'm not going to accept the way you speak to me, or whatever, like, so it's just like an adult conversation. I wouldn't accept it from somebody else. It's not okay. And not have the argument, because that was the problem as I was getting older. I would have the argument. I'd be like, don't speak to me like that, you know, blah, 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 and then but who's that going to help? No one,
Yeah.
because you're bad to them, and not that it was bad, but it's that, ongoing evolution of
Yeah,
it.
and
So
it's just helping them with their social skills and problem solving in the world.
definitely,
It's teaching them how that they're going to speak to other people and what they're going to accept themselves, as they,
yeah,
start going off into the world and start having relationships or jobs or whatever it might be.
yeah.
And I think those are just absolutely, so important. Those skills are just so important. And we're just teaching it through modeling it rather than
Mm,
I say. I
I
say to
know.
do, I'm not doing it myself, but you have to do this. We're doing it. And that's the quickest way that any
Oh,
child's going to learn is if
oh,
they
for
see
sure.
it.
And it's also, if you're in a relationship, and you're liking each other and you're still together, it's not been easy for sure, but it's picking each other up on that too. Like,
Mhm.
okay, the way that you just spoke like that and she spoke back, and same with me. Like if I've got grumpy or whatever, my husband will be like, that you didn't really need to lose your temper then. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's like, it's
Yeah.
teamwork. If you've got somebody else, it's not easy at times, but it's on ourselves firstly. But then if you've got a relationship, whatever that looks like, if you can sort of help each other out as well, you know. Okay, we could talk all day. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have, what do you have for parents that might need some extra one-on-one, or like what do you have to provide for, what do you do? Tell me, what have you got?
Yes, so I would say definitely go to the Instagram because
Yeah,
that's where all the free resources are. So that's
yeah,
Conscious Mothers Group. Then from there, I also have a free mini course for parents, which is stepping away from blame, shame, and guilt.
right,
And if you really love that, then I have a full course, which is called the Conscious Caregiver, which is everything today we spoke about and more. It's
sure.
absolutely everything like every single module that you could need if
Awesome,
you want to go on this
awesome,
journey.
awesome.
Yeah, so I'd say that those are probably
Plenty.
the yeah, the three things that you can get from me.
Yep,
And yeah, you'll find that through my Instagram, or my
definitely.
website is We Are Nature Network.
Beautiful. And that's no, we didn't even get into all of that with schooling and stuff. So I would love to
Yeah.
get you back on for a part 2 to talk about all of that too with schooling and stuff like that, because that's another whole big thing that I'd like to
Yes,
talk to you about. So with the
always
schooling
fun.
system, the schooling system and how it's just, a lot for our children and all of
Yes, I would love to. That's always a
yes,
great
awesome.
conversation.
Thank you so much. I've loved our chat and have a great day and I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.